They promised financial freedom with a single tap, a revolutionary investment app that turned ordinary people into overnight success stories. But behind the slick interface and testimonials was the largest digital heist in American history. Over $10 million in life savings vanished. Retirement funds, college tuitions, medical emergency money gone in an instant. Elderly veterans who trusted technology for the first time. Single mothers who believed they were securing their children's futures. Immigrants who invested every penny of the American dream. All of them victims of a sophisticated scheme that exploited trust, manipulated algorithms, and weaponized hope. This is the story of how one lawyer refused to let the voiceless disappear into legal fine print. How victims became warriors. How a digital theft became a fight for justice that would expose an entire industry. This is the digital thief, and the hunt for accountability has just begun. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mike sits across from the interviewer, his expression measured but intense. The conference room is sparse, just a table, 2 chairs, and a wall of legal documents stacked in banker's boxes. He's been a public interest attorney for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for this case. Tell me how this started, the interviewer asks. Mike leans forward. It started with hope. That's what makes this so devastating. These weren't reckless gamblers or greedy investors. These were everyday people trying to survive, trying to build something for their families. The app was called Wealth Flow, clean interface, professional marketing. Testimonials from supposed users who turned $500 into $50,000 in months. The pitch was simple. AI-driven micro investments that worked while you slept. Fractional shares, automated trading, risk management built in. Download the app, connect your bank account, watch your money grow. The algorithm does the heavy lifting. The promotional videos promise. Your financial freedom is one tap away. For people like Lily Daniels, a 6-7-year-old retired nurse from Ohio, it seemed like an answer to prayers. Her pension barely covered rent after her husband's medical bills depleted their savings. She saw the Facebook ads, read the reviews, watched the success stories. She invested $12,000, everything she had left. I thought I was being smart, Lily tells Mike during their first meeting, her hands trembling as she holds a printed bank statement. My grandson works in tech. He said apps like this were the future. I didn't want to be left behind. Matthew Moore was 34, a construction worker in Texas trying to save for his daughter's college fund. He started small, $2,000. Within weeks, the app showed his balance growing. $500 gains, then $1,000. The interface displayed real-time updates, professional charts, market analysis. It felt legitimate. I added more. Matthew admits in his interview with Mike, another $3,000, then $5,000. The app kept showing profits. I thought I was finally getting ahead. Valerie Kim, a 2-year-old immigrant who owned a small dry cleaning business in California, invested $18,000 money she'd saved for a decade to help her parents back in South Korea with medical expenses. The app's multilingual interface made her feel included, understood. The customer service representative spoke Korean, answered her questions with patience and professionalism. Mike explains to the interviewer how the pattern worked. Wealthflow didn't just steal money. They engineered trust. They showed fake gains to keep people invested. They had a customer service team, real people answering phones, replying to emails. When users wanted to withdraw money, there were always reasons for delays. Processing times, verification requirements, market volatility holding periods. The delays started small. 3 days became a week became 2 weeks. Then the messages changed. Due to unusual account activity, your withdrawal is under review. Temporary technical difficulties are affecting transfer processing. Additional identity verification required to prevent fraud. Lily called customer service 17 times. Each representative was polite, apologetic, reassuring. Her money was safe. The delays were standard procedure. Just a few more days. Matthew tried to withdraw his entire balance, now showing $22,000 in the app. When his daughter needed emergency dental surgery, the withdrawal request was denied. His account was suddenly flagged for suspicious activity. He needed to submit additional documentation, pay a verification fee to unlock his funds. They wanted me to send more money to get my money back, Matthew says, his voice breaking. That's when I knew something was wrong. Valerie couldn't reach anyone. The phone number went to voicemail. Emails bounced back. The app's interface went dark. Mike pulls out a folder thick with complaints. By the time victims realized they'd been scammed, WealthFlow had already moved on. New name, new interface, same scheme, and the damage was catastrophic. The interviewer asked the question viewers are thinking, how many people were affected? Mike's jaw tightens. We're still counting. But conservatively, over $10 million stolen, hundreds of victims, and those are just the ones who came forward. He pauses, his expression hardening. Most victims were too ashamed to report it. They blamed themselves. That's exactly what the thieves counted on. The conference room has changed. Now, there are 3 other attorneys at the table with Mike, laptops open, documents spread across every surface. The interviewer notices the shift immediately. This isn't just one lawyer's crusade anymore. This is war. When did you realize this was bigger than a few isolated cases, the interviewer asks. Mike gestures to his colleague, a sharp-eyed woman named Kendall Harper who specializes in financial fraud. She's been tracking digital scams for 8 years, but WealthFlow caught her attention for a different reason. The sophistication, Kendall explains. Most app scams are obvious, terrible grammar, sketchy websites, too good to be true promises. WealthFlow was different. They had a registered LLC, professional web design, a physical address in Delaware. They even had a securities disclaimer buried in the terms of service that technically absolved them of responsibility for losses. Mike adds context. They studied the law. They knew exactly how to walk the line between fraud and what they could claim was high-risk investment disclosure, but what they didn't count on was victims talking to each other. The breakthrough came through a Facebook group. Lily Daniels, frustrated and desperate, searched online for information about WealthFlow. She found a private group with 43 members, all victims. Their stories were identical. Same promises, same fake gains, same withdrawal denials, same disappearing act. That's when she called me, Mike says. She'd already filed a police report, contacted the Better Business Bureau, tried the Federal Trade Commission. Everyone told her the same thing. Civil matter, too complicated, probably unrecoverable. She was told to accept the loss and move on. Mike refused to accept that answer. He started making calls. Within 2 weeks, he'd identified over 200 victims. The Facebook group exploded to 500 members. Local news stations picked up the story. More victims emerged from the shadows, people who'd been too embarrassed to admit they'd been scammed, who thought they were alone in their shame. Anthony White, a 71-year-old Vietnam veteran from Florida, lost $42,000, his entire VA disability back payment he'd been saving to leave to his grandchildren. He'd never invested in anything before, but the app's patriotic marketing spoke to him. Secure your family's future was the tagline that hooked him. I served my country for 30 years. Anthony says in his testimony recorded on Mike's phone during a home visit, I survived combat, I survived Agent Orange, and some punk with an app took everything I had left to give my family. That's not right. That's not America. Faith Gilbert, a 29-year-old single mother working 2 jobs in Georgia, invested $8,000 she'd saved from tax returns over 3 years. She dreamed of buying a small house for her 2 kids. The app promised to help her reach the down payment faster. I believe them. Faith says, tears streaming down her face in the interview footage Mike plays for the reporter, I believed I was doing something smart for my babies. Now I'm further behind than when I started. How do I explain that to them? Mike's investigation uncovered the pattern. WealthFlow specifically targeted vulnerable populations, elderly people unfamiliar with technology but desperate to stretch fixed incomes, working class families trying to escape paycheck-to-paycheck cycles, immigrants seeking financial stability in America, veterans trusting patriotic marketing. They weaponized the American dream, Mike says, his voice hard with anger. They found people who had every reason to be cautious and convinced them that caution was keeping them poor. Kendall pulls up a spreadsheet on her laptop. We tracked the money. WealthFlow was operated by a company called Apex Digital Solutions. Corporate address in Delaware, but no physical office. Bank accounts in 3 different states. Wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. The corporate registration listed two names, Victor Malone as CEO and Tristan Boyd as Chief Technology Officer. Both have created multiple LLCs over the past 5 years. Each company operated for 6 to 8 months, then dissolved. New name, new app, same scam. They're serial predators. Mike explains. This isn't their first time. It won't be their last unless we stop them. The interviewer asks the obvious question, did you contact Malone and Boyd? Mike's expression darkens. We tried. The addresses were fake. The phone numbers disconnected. The LLC was dissolved 2 days after the first news story broke. They vanished. But Mike doesn't give up easily. He filed a class action lawsuit anyway, naming the dissolved company, the two individuals, and something unexpected, the banks that processed the transactions. If we can't find the thieves, we go after the institutions that enabled them, Mike says. Banks have a responsibility to flag suspicious activity. Multiple large withdrawals from consumer accounts into newly created business accounts should have triggered alerts. It didn't. We want to know why. The case attracted attention from unexpected places. A former employee of Apex Digital Solutions, a customer service representative named Parker Grant, reached out to Mike anonymously through an encrypted email. Quick pause. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I didn't know it was a scam when I took the job, Parker's voice says through Mike's phone recording, distorted to protect his identity. They hired me through a remote work platform. I thought I was doing legitimate customer support. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd already helped steal from hundreds of people. Parker provided internal communications, training documents, and scripts used to delay victim withdrawals. He explained the psychological manipulation tactics, make victims feel like they made mistakes, create bureaucratic obstacles, exhaust them until they gave up. The company trained us to gaslight victims, Parker says. That's the word they used. Make them question themselves, make them feel stupid, make them go away quietly. Mike looks directly at the camera. This wasn't just theft. This was systematic psychological abuse designed to silence victims, and it worked until now. The interviewer shifts in her seat. What happened when you presented this wad? Evidence. Mike smiles grimly. That's when things got interesting. 3 months into the investigation, Mike's office looks like a war room. Whiteboards covered with timelines, corporate structures, money flow diagrams. His team has grown 2 more attorneys, a forensic accountant named Simon Briggs, and a cybersecurity expert named Cooper Ellis, who volunteered his time after seeing the news coverage. The interviewer notices the change in energy. You've made progress. We've made him nervous, Mike corrects. There's a difference. Cooper's digital forensics uncovered something crucial. WealthFlow wasn't just one app, it was part of a network. Using metadata analysis and code comparison, he identified 7 other investment apps with identical back-end architecture. Different names, different interfaces, but the same underlying scam. They're running multiple operations simultaneously, Cooper explains, pulling up side-by-side screenshots. When one app gets too much attention, they shut it down and push users to a sister company that's supposedly more secure. It's the same people, same scam, new package. The network had names like ProsperPath, MoneyMaven, WealthWise, Capital Climb. Each targeted slightly different demographics but operated identically. The total estimated theft across all platforms, over $28 million. Simon, the forensic accountant, traced the corporate structures. It's layers upon layers. Shell companies registered in Delaware and Nevada, bank accounts in Texas and Florida. Wire transfers that bounce through 3 countries before landing in untraceable crypto wallets. These people know what they're doing. But Mike found a crack in the armor. One bank, Southwest Financial Trust, processed transactions for 4 of the 7 apps. The same compliance officer approved all the business accounts. That officer's name, Eric Sutton. Banks are required to file suspicious activity reports when they detect potential fraud. Mike explains to the interviewer, large cash movements from consumer accounts to newly registered businesses with no operating history should trigger immediate flags. Southwest Financial filed 0 reports. Mike subpoenaed Southwest Financial's internal records. The bank fought it, but a federal judge sided with Mike, noting the compelling public interest in financial consumer protection. The records revealed something damning. Eric Sutton had approved over $6 million in transfers from victim accounts to Apex Digital Solutions and related entities. He'd ignored 3 separate automated fraud alerts from the bank's own risk management system. He'd overridden compliance holds that would have frozen suspicious accounts. Either he's criminally incompetent or he's complicit. Kendall says bluntly, "We think it's the latter." Mike's team discovered that Eric Sutton received monthly wire transfers from a consulting company called Harbor Advisory Group. That company was owned by Reed Palmer, who happened to be Victor Malone's college roommate and business partner in 2 previous ventures. They bought themselves a bank insider. Mike says, his voice tight with controlled anger. Sutton wasn't just negligent, he was paid to look the other way. The investigation attracted federal attention. An FBI agent named Zoe Lewis reached out to Mike, a white-collar crime division specialized in digital fraud. She'd been tracking similar scams but lacked the victim testimonies and paper trail Mike had assembled. "Your class action lawsuit gave us the roadmap we needed." Agent Lewis tells the interviewer in a separate recorded statement, "Mike did in 3 months what would have taken us 2 years. He organized the victims, tracked the money, identified the network. We're now running a parallel criminal investigation." But as Mike's case gained momentum, the threat started. Anonymous emails warning him to drop the case. His office building received a fake bomb threat that triggered a full evacuation. Someone attempted to hack his firm's server. Cooper caught it and traced the IP address to a VPN service in Romania, but the trail went cold. "They're scared," Mike says. Good. They should be. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Allison Hughes, a 4-5-year-old accountant from Pennsylvania, was a wealth flow victim who lost $16,000. But unlike other victims, Allison had forensic accounting training. She'd meticulously documented every transaction, screenshot, email, and customer service call. When wealth flow collapsed, Allison did something brilliant. She created a fake identity and signed up for one of the sister apps, Capital Climb. She invested $100 and tracked everything. "I wanted to see if they'd make the same mistakes." Allison explains in her interview with Mike, they did. Same withdrawal delays, same excuses, same psychological tactics. But they also made one critical error. Capital Climb's customer service accidentally sent Allison an internal email thread instead of a customer response. The email contained names, phone numbers, and a physical office address, a small suite in a Miami office building registered under yet another LLC, but with a real lease agreement. Mike and Agent Lewis coordinated. Federal agents raided the Miami office while Mike filed an emergency court order to freeze all associated bank accounts. The office was small, just 3 desks, some computers, filing cabinets full of victim information, but they found Tristan Boyd there working late. Boyd, the chief technology officer, arrested on the spot. "Where's Victor Malone?" Agent Lewis demanded during the interrogation. Boyd initially refused to talk, but when faced with federal charges carrying 20 years in prison, he started negotiating. Mike watches the interrogation video with the interviewer. Boyd's face on the screen looks younger than expected, only 31 years old, wearing an expensive watch and designer clothes. "Malone's gone," Boyd says in the video. "He liquidated everything 2 months ago, took his share and disappeared. I don't know where he is." But Boyd provided something valuable, access to the server containing every victim's information, every transaction, every dollar stolen. The evidence was overwhelming. Mike looks at the interviewer, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and frustration. "We got one of them, but the mastermind is still out there, and the victims still haven't gotten their money back." The interviewer leans forward. "So what happens now?" Mike's eyes narrow. "Now we go after everyone who made this possible. Boyd, Sutton, the banks, and we find Malone no matter where he's hiding." He pauses, and for the first time, there's a hint of something dangerous in his smile. Because they made one massive mistake. They underestimated how far people will go when you steal their dreams. The conference room is packed. Mike, Kendall, Agent Lewis, Cooper, Simon, and 2 federal prosecutors. The energy is electric. Tristan Boyd has been cooperating for 2 weeks, and what he's revealed has changed everything. You need to understand something. Mike tells the interviewer, his voice low and urgent. We thought we were chasing a tech scam. We were wrong. This is so much bigger. Boyd's cooperation unlocked a nightmare. The stolen money from WealthFlow and its sister apps wasn't just sitting in offshore accounts. It was being laundered through a network of legitimate businesses, restaurants, car washes, real estate holdings, even a small regional bank. Victor Malone isn't just a scammer. Agent Lewis explains in her interview segment. He's a sophisticated financial criminal with connections we're still unraveling. The investment apps were just one piece of a larger operation. Simon, the forensic accountant, discovered the pattern. Victim funds were transferred to crypto wallets, converted to cash through international exchanges, then injected into legitimate businesses as fake revenue. Those businesses paid taxes, filed proper paperwork, created the appearance of legal income. It's textbook money laundering, Simon says, pointing to financial flow charts that look like spider webs. But the scale is unprecedented for this type of fraud. We're talking about a criminal enterprise that's been operating for at least 7 years. Cooper's digital forensics revealed something even more disturbing. The victim data harvested by WealthFlow, social security numbers, bank account information, addresses, employment history was being sold on the dark web to identity theft rings. They didn't just steal money, Cooper explains, his face grim. They stole identities. We've identified at least 40 victims who've had credit cards opened in their names, loans taken out, tax returns fraudulently filed. The financial devastation goes far beyond the initial theft. But the bombshell came from Boyd himself during a recorded proffer session with federal prosecutors. Mike plays the audio for the interviewer, Boyd's voice tired and resigned. Malone has a partner, someone with serious money and connections. I only met him twice. He goes by Reggie Bishop, but I don't think that's his real name. He provided the initial capital to set up the infrastructure. He's the one who built the money laundering network. The room goes silent on the tape. Then Agent Lewis's voice. Describe him. Late 40s, expensive suits, talks like someone with an MBA. He mentioned real estate holdings in 3 states. Said he needed to move money from overseas investments without triggering federal reporting requirements. Malone's scams provided the perfect vehicle, lots of small transactions from individual accounts, easy to blend with legitimate business revenue. Mike pauses the recording and looks at the interviewer. Reggie Bishop, we ran that name through every database, nothing. It's an alias. But Boyd gave us something better, security camera footage from one of their meetings. The grainy footage shows 2 men in a parking garage. One is clearly Victor Malone from DMV photos. The other is older, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most victims' stolen savings. We ran facial recognition, Agent Lewis says, and got a hit from corporate filings and real estate records. His real name is Ashton Bishop. He owns Bishop Holdings, LLC, a private investment firm managing over $200 million in assets, luxury hotels, commercial real estate, import-export businesses. Mike leans forward, his voice intense. Ashton Bishop is a legitimate businessman, country club member, donor to political campaigns. His name appears on charity foundation boards. And he's using working-class victims' life savings to launder money from sources we're still identifying. The investigation exploded outward. Federal agents seized Bishop Holdings' financial records. What they found was staggering. Shell companies in Panama, accounts in Switzerland, property holdings registered to trusts in the British Virgin Islands. The money flowing through Bishop's network wasn't just from the app scams. There were indicators of international wire fraud, potential sanctions, violations, and suspicious transactions linked to Eastern European organized crime. We thought we were prosecuting a tech scam, Mike says, his jaw tight. We're actually prosecuting a transnational criminal conspiracy. And the victims, people like Lily and Matthew and Anthony, they were just collateral damage in something much darker. Kendall adds critical context. Bishop needed a way to move dirty money into clean investments. Small dollar thefts from hundreds of victims create the perfect smokescreen. Each transaction is small enough to avoid immediate federal scrutiny. Aggregate them through multiple apps and businesses and you can launder millions. The interviewer asks the question viewers are thinking, where's Ashton Bishop now? Mike's expression hardens. That's the problem. He disappeared the same day we identified him. Private jet left Miami for the Bahamas. Trail goes cold after that. The Bahamas doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. for financial crimes. Agent Lewis picks up the thread. But Victor Malone, we got a break there. Interpol flagged a passport under a different name crossing into Mexico 3 months ago. Facial recognition match. He's using the identity of a deceased person, but we know he's in Latin America. Mike pulls out a folder thick with new victim statements. After the news broke about Bishop's involvement, more victims came forward, not just from the investment apps. People who lost money in other schemes, real estate investment scams, cryptocurrency fraud, fake loan modification services. We're now tracking 17 different operations that connect back to this network. The case transformed from a class action lawsuit into a federal RICO prosecution. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act used to prosecute organized crime families. The victims Mike represented are now witnesses in one of the largest financial crime cases in years. The victims deserve to know the truth, Mike says quietly. They weren't foolish. They weren't careless. They were targeted by a sophisticated criminal organization that studies human psychology, exploits economic desperation, and operates with the precision of a Fortune 500 company. He looks directly at the camera. Lily Daniels didn't lose her savings to a bad app. She lost it to a transnational criminal conspiracy. That's not a personal failure. That's a systemic crime. And we're going to hold every single person involved accountable. The interviewer leans back, processing the scope of what's been revealed. So what happens now? How do you prosecute criminals in foreign countries? Mike's smile is cold, very carefully, and with a lot of international cooperation. 6 months have passed since Ashton Bishop and Victor Malone disappeared. The conference room has evolved again now. There are federal prosecutors, international liaison officers, and representatives from Interpol on video conference screens. This isn't just Mike's fight anymore. It's a multinational manhunt. Bringing international fugitives to justice is complex, Agent Lewis explains to the interviewer, but it's not impossible. We have tools, treaties, and most importantly, we have leverage. The leverage came from Tristan Boyd's continued cooperation and a new source, Eric Sutton, the bank compliance officer who'd been accepting bribes. Facing 20 years in federal prison, Sutton provided detailed records of wire transfers, account numbers, and communication logs with both Malone and Bishop. Sutton kept everything, Simon says, spreading documents across the table. Emails, text messages, even recorded phone calls he made to cover himself. He didn't trust his partners, so he created insurance. That insurance is now our roadmap. The financial trail led to 3 countries: the Bahamas, where Bishop initially fled, Costa Rica, where shell companies held real estate, and Panama, where both Bishop and Malone maintained bank accounts under corporate entities. Mike's legal team coordinated with the Department of Justice's Office of International Affairs. The strategy was multifaceted: freeze assets, pressure foreign banks, leverage diplomatic relationships, and offer rewards for information leading to arrests. We froze over $40 million across 6 jurisdictions, Kendall reports. Bishop Holdings accounts, subsidiary companies, even personal accounts belonging to Bishop's family members who weren't involved in the fraud but benefited from it. The asset freezes created pressure. Bishop's legitimate businesses couldn't operate without access to capital. His lawyers reached out not to negotiate surrender, but to negotiate asset release. Mike refused. You don't get to steal from working families and then negotiate, Mike tells the interviewer, his voice steal. Every dollar frozen is a dollar that might go back to victims. I'm not releasing anything. Meanwhile, Cooper's cyber investigation uncovered something crucial. Malone was still operating. Using encrypted communications and cryptocurrency, he launched a new scam, this time targeting Spanish-speaking communities in Latin America with a fake cryptocurrency investment platform. He can't help himself, Cooper says with disgust. He's a predator. Even on the run, even with federal charges hanging over him, he's still stealing from vulnerable people. Cooper worked with cybersecurity firms in Mexico and Colombia to track Malone's digital footprint. The cryptocurrency scam required server infrastructure, payment processing, and customer service operations. Each left traces. We identified a server farm in Mexico City processing transactions for the new scam, Cooper explains. Mexican authorities raided it. They didn't find Malone, but they found 3 people running the operation. One of them knew where Malone was staying. Agent Lewis coordinated with Mexican federal police. They tracked Malone to a resort town on the Pacific coast, Puerto Vallarta, living under the name Wesley Ford with fake Mexican residency documents. Mexican authorities don't take kindly to foreign criminals using their country as a hideout, Agent Lewis says with satisfaction, especially when those criminals are actively running scams against Mexican citizens. They arrested him at a beachfront condo. He tried to run, didn't get far. The arrest made international news. Malone's extradition took 3 months lawyers fighting, diplomatic negotiations, legal challenges, but Mexico's Attorney General's office prioritized the case. Too many of their citizens had been victimized. Mike flew to Mexico City for the extradition hearing. I wanted him to see me, Mike says. I wanted him to know that the people he dismissed as marks, as suckers, as easy targets, they had someone who wouldn't quit. The video shows Malone in Mexican federal custody, thinner, unshaven, wearing an orange jumpsuit, the expensive watch long gone. He looks at Mike across the courtroom. No recognition, no remorse, just cold calculation. That's when I understood something, Mike tells the interviewer. People like Malone don't feel empathy. They see victims as resources to extract. Emotions don't factor in. It's purely transactional. Malone was extradited to Miami to face federal charges, wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, conspiracy, and RICO violations. Total potential sentence, over 100 years in prison. But Ashton Bishop remained at large. The Bahamas proved more complicated. Bishop had purchased citizenship through the country's investment program, a legal path to passport ownership through real estate investment. As a Bahamian citizen, extradition became exponentially more difficult. He paid for protection, Kendall explains. $2 million in real estate investments bought him a passport and legal residency. The Bahamas has limited extradition agreements with the U.S., and financial crimes aren't typically covered. Mike refused to accept that roadblock. He coordinated with the victims to file a civil lawsuit in Bahamian courts seeking to seize Bishop's properties on the islands as proceeds of criminal activity. Bahamian law allows civil asset forfeiture based on foreign criminal judgments. We're attacking from every angle, Mike says. Criminal prosecution in the U.S., civil forfeiture in the Bahamas, freezing his assets worldwide, making it impossible for him to access money or travel freely. The pressure worked. Bishop's lawyers approached the Department of Justice with a proposal, voluntary return to the U.S. in exchange for specific sentencing considerations. He'd plead guilty to reduced charges, provide full cooperation on larger criminal networks, testify against international partners, and forfeit all seized assets to victim restitution. It wasn't perfect, Agent Lewis admits. We wanted to drag him back in chains. But the reality of international law meant this might be our only chance at justice. Mike consulted with the victims. Lily, Matthew, Valerie, Anthony, Faith, Allison, hundreds of people whose lives had been devastated. The question was simple. Accept a plea deal that guarantees conviction and asset recovery, or risk years of appeals and potential escape. They voted, Mike says quietly, almost unanimous. They wanted their money back. They wanted Bishop in prison. They wanted it to end. The interviewer asked the critical question, did they get their money back? Mike's expression is complicated, part victory, part frustration. Some of it. The asset forfeitures recovered about $12 million. Split among over 300 victims, it's about 35 cents on the dollar. Some victims got significant portions back. Others got almost nothing. He pauses, his voice thick with emotion. Lily Daniels got $4,000 back from her $12,000 loss. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something, and for people living on fixed incomes, even partial recovery makes a difference. The interviewer presses, is that justice? Mike looks directly at the camera. Justice would be full restitution. Justice would be these predators never seeing daylight again. But this is accountability. It's consequences. It's the system finally working imperfectly, incompletely, but working. He leans forward, his intensity burning through the screen, and it sends a message. You can run elaborate scams. You can hide behind shell companies and offshore accounts. You can exploit vulnerable people and disappear to tropical islands. But if the victims find the right advocate, if someone refuses to quit, if the system actually does its job, you will be found. You will be prosecuted. You will pay. The federal courthouse in Miami is packed. News cameras line the steps outside. Inside, the gallery is filled with victims, people who traveled from across the country to witness this moment. Lily Daniels sits in the front row, her hands folded in her lap. Matthew Moore stands against the back wall, arms crossed. Faith Gilbert holds a photo of her children. Anthony White wears his service medals. Mike sits at the prosecutor's table looking more exhausted than triumphant. This is what justice looks like, he tells the interviewer weeks later after the sentencing hearings conclude. It's not perfect, it's not Hollywood, but it's real. Victor Malone received 42 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 20 years. The judge's words were scathing during sentencing. You targeted the most vulnerable members of our society. Judge Callie Rhodes stated from the bench, you weaponized their hope, exploited their trust, and destroyed their financial security. Your actions weren't just theft, they were psychological warfare against ordinary Americans trying to survive. Malone showed no emotion. He didn't apologize. He didn't address the victims. He simply stared straight ahead as marshals led him away. Ashton Bishop's plea deal resulted in 18 years, significantly less than Malone, but his cooperation provided something invaluable. His testimony exposed 3 additional international fraud networks, led to 14 more arrests across 4 countries, and helped recover an additional $8 million for victims beyond the original case. Some people think Bishop got off easy, Mike admits, and maybe he did. But his information helped dismantle operations that would have victimized thousands more people. That matters. Eric Sutton, the corrupt bank compliance officer, received 12 years and was ordered to pay $3 million in restitution from his own assets, money he'd been paid to look the other way. Tristan Boyd, the cooperating defendant, received 5 years in permanent prohibition from working in financial services or technology. He'll be released at age 36, his entire adult life marked by his role in destroying others. But the real story isn't the criminals, it's the victims who refuse to stay silent. Lily Daniels used her partial restitution to volunteer with elderly fraud prevention programs. She speaks at community centers, teaching other seniors how to spot scams. Matthew Moore started a support group for fraud victims in his hometown. 23 members meet monthly, sharing resources and helping each other rebuild. Faith Gilbert is back on her feet slowly. The recovered funds didn't replace everything, but combined with community fundraising after her story went public, she saved enough for a small down payment on a house. Anthony White didn't live to see the sentencing. He passed away 4 months before trial from complications related to his service injuries. But his testimony, recorded by Mike's team, was played in court. His grandchildren were present when Malone was sentenced. The victory isn't just the convictions, Mike says, his voice thick with emotion. It's that these people didn't disappear into shame. They stood up. They fought back. They refused to be erased. The interviewer asks the final question, what do you want people to take away from this story? Mike is quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That being scammed doesn't make you stupid. That the system, as broken and slow and imperfect as it is, can still work if enough people refuse to quit. He pauses, looking directly at the camera, and that there are lawyers, investigators, agents, advocates who will fight for the voiceless. You're not alone. Your story matters. Your fight matters. Justice might be slow, but it's possible. The screen fades to resources, fraud reporting hotlines, legal aid services, victim support groups. Then one final image, a photo of all the victims who participated in the case standing together outside the courthouse after sentencing. They're not smiling, but they're standing together, unbroken. Mike's voice over the image. This is what winning looks like. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoy this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.